So we've basically been taught our entire lives that the absolute secret to success is just to grind it out, right? To hustle. But what if I told you that striving harder is exactly what's making us fail? What if the ultimate secret to being effective, attractive, and genuinely successful isn't trying harder, but actually learning an ancient technique of how not to try at all? Let's get right into this explainer and figure it out.
I mean, think about the last time you desperately needed to fall asleep before a huge morning meeting. You're lying in bed, you're squeezing your eyes shut, literally commanding your brain to shut down. And what happens? You just stay wide awake. Or think about going on a first date and trying really hard to be super charming and perfectly relaxed. Yeah, that usually just leads to incredibly stiff, awkward conversation. And why is it that when we stare blankly at a textbook, practically forcing ourselves to concentrate, the information just completely bounces off our brains? It's like the more we try to force these natural states, the further away they slip.
Which brings us to the modern crisis of burnout. It all really boils down to what we call the paradox of striving. Honestly, we often live our lives sweating profusely, just like a little stick man trying to push a massive, totally impossible boulder up a steep hill. We rely purely on brute force willpower and highly conscious thought to just get through our days. But here's the thing. Research and ancient wisdom completely agree on this. In so many areas of life, effort is profoundly counterproductive. Our excessive focus on self-control causes us to completely overlook our fast, semi-automatic behaviors. Basically, when we push too hard, we actually sabotage our own success.
Okay, let's dive right into the fix. The 2,000-year-old Chinese solution to this very modern problem is a concept called Wu-Wei. Imagine dropping that incredibly heavy boulder and instead effortlessly surfing a massive wave. That's the vibe. Wu-Wei literally translates to no trying or no doing. But let's get one thing straight. It is definitely not about being lazy. It is this dynamic, completely unselfconscious state of being optimally effective. It's when you're entirely in the zone, acting spontaneously, yet somehow everything you do is perfectly right. You literally feel like you're doing nothing, but you are smoothly navigating super complex situations and totally crushing your goals.
Now, the natural byproduct of Wu-Wei is something called Di, and this translates to virtue or charismatic power. When you actually achieve Wu-Wei, you start to radiate this magnetic energy that other people instantly detect. For leaders, creators, or literally anyone just navigating social life, Di has a surprisingly magical effect. It effortlessly draws trust, resources, and cooperation from other people. You don't have to force people to like you or even force them to listen to you. They just naturally want to. How cool is that?
Now, looking at this breakdown, you might be wondering how Wu-Wei compares to a concept you might already know, flow, which was popularized by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And while they definitely look kind of similar on the surface, they are fundamentally different. As you can see, flow is a secular, highly cognitive state triggered when your skill level perfectly matches a difficult task. Think of playing a really hard video game. It results in peak individual performance. Wu-Wei, on the other hand, is so much deeper. It's ethical. It's holistic. It's triggered by this perfect integration of your conscious mind, your body, and the larger order of the world around you. The result isn't just a personal high score. It's spontaneous social harmony and that magnetic G we just talked about. It's really about losing your ego into something way bigger than yourself.
But hold on, because here is the massive catch, the paradox loop. If Wu-Wei is the ultimate secret to life, how do you actually try to achieve it? Seriously, think about it. If you consciously say to yourself, okay, I'm going to force myself to be spontaneous right now, well, you've instantly ruined the spontaneity. There's no way around it. You can't try, but you also obviously can't just sit around and do nothing. So how in the world do we get off this hamster wheel? How do we consciously force ourselves into a completely unconscious state?
To solve this wild paradox, we turn to the incredible work of cognitive scientist and Asian studies scholar Edward Slingerland. In his framework, he points out that classical Chinese philosophy doesn't just offer one single answer. It actually offers 4 distinct strategies, 4 completely different paths to spontaneity.
The first path comes from Confucius, and it's all about carving and polishing. Imagine meticulously carving a raw block of jade. Confucius essentially believed that true spontaneity is actually a massive cultural achievement. It requires long-term, highly disciplined habituation. Basically, you have to learn the rules, learn the rituals, and practice them relentlessly until they become absolute second nature. Think of a classical musician who just practices scales for decades. Eventually, they don't even think about their fingers anymore, right? The music just flows completely effortlessly. You try really hard for a really long time, until you simply no longer have to try.
Now, what's really interesting about this next approach is how the philosopher Laozi takes the exact opposite route. His metaphor is the uncarved block. Laozi believed that human nature is fundamentally good from the start, and that education, strict rules, and all this constant striving actually ruin us. He says you need to just stop trying completely, drop your tools and return to nature. Strip away all that gaudy paint of socialization, drop your fake social masks, and just return to your simple, pure, innate nature. In our modern world, we can totally think of this as digital minimalism, radically simplifying your life and completely rejecting superficial social norms so your real, true self can effortlessly emerge. Okay, so what if you kind of want a middle ground? Well, that brings us right to Mencius, whose strategy is cultivating the sprouts. Mencius believed we all have these innate positive tendencies, but they desperately need to be nurtured, like gently watering tiny little sprouts. If you impatiently pull on a sprout to make it grow faster, you'll literally kill it. But if you just completely ignore it, it's going to die too. You have to apply this gentle gradualism. Like, try, but whatever you do, don't force it. Just provide the right environment, the right nutrients, and let things naturally unfold. Today, we actually see this a lot in strength-based leadership or progressive education, where you're gently guiding someone's natural talents, rather than just forcing them into some rigid, predefined box.
And finally, we have Zhuangzi's incredibly radical method, fasting of the mind. This one requires dropping that massive, heavy bag of expectations and ego. Zhuangzi says the only real way off the wheel is to transcend the ego entirely. You literally have to forget yourself, forget your body, and forget your obsessive striving. Once you are completely empty, you become totally open and flexible to the world around you. You start responding perfectly to whatever context you happen to be in. It is the absolute ultimate version of going with the flow. Think of a jazz musician just improvising a wild solo, or a crisis manager who has to completely drop all their pre-planned manuals and just react perfectly to a super chaotic situation.
So the absolutely crucial point here is, how do we actually apply this ancient wisdom to our lives right now? Well, one of the biggest ways we ruin our own Wu-Wei today is our modern obsession with rigid, super narrow goals. Ancient philosophy, when paired with modern productivity science, actually shows us that focusing purely on strict goals restricts our happiness, totally reduces our intrinsic motivation, and honestly, it just causes massive burnout. Instead, we need to shift our focus entirely to daily systems. When you rely on a really well-designed daily system, you remove all that terrible anxiety of the destination. You basically allow progress to happen naturally and effortlessly, simply as a byproduct of your daily rhythm.
As Laozi so famously said, great acts are made up of small deeds. If you really want to replace the paralyzing anxiety of constant striving with the smooth, effortless flow of Wu-Wei, you have to rely on small, incredibly consistent habits. It's the daily commitment to the process, not the obsessive hyperfixation on the goal, that makes the real difference. I promise you, when your daily system is dialed in, the really big achievements, they happen almost as an afterthought. All right, let's bring all of this together into some actual practical steps to achieve effortless action in our crazy, chaotic digital world. First, definitely take a page from the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Filter out those digital distractions to cultivate a calm mind. You simply cannot achieve Wu-Wei if your phone is buzzing every 3 seconds. It's impossible. Second, start treating focus exactly like a muscle. Build it up gradually with short, uninterrupted blocks rather than trying to force some grueling 8-hour study session. Third, channel Epictetus. Radically accept what is outside your control. Seriously, stop wasting your precious energy on things you can't change. And finally, start relying on your body thinking. Trust your highly trained instincts and your unconscious mind, rather than trying to brute force every single tiny decision with sheer willpower.
So, we've unpacked the crazy paradox of striving and the truly incredible power of Wu-Wei. We've looked at Confucius's carving, Laozi's uncarved block, Mencius's sprouting, and Zhuangzi's fasting of the mind. So here's my final question for you. Which of these 4 paths will you try, or perhaps more accurately, not try tomorrow? Are you going to practice relentlessly, or are you just going to let go of your ego entirely and go with the flow? Pick a path, test it out in your own life, and discover just how effortless success can truly be. Thanks so much for diving into this explainer with me, and I'll catch you next time.